In 1987, federal authorities locked me in prison and I was incarcerated for 26 years. But every single day that I was in prison, I thought about what could I do to emerge successfully because I had all the stats, the same stats that you have. If you're sitting in jail or prison right now, you know that it's really difficult to make a living. You see it all around you. How many people get out, they can't get a job before they know it, they're back into some type of bad decision that brings them back in prison. I didn't want that for me. I didn't want that for you. And that's the reason we create these videos every day. We want to teach people options that they can pursue to earn a legitimate living and be super excited. And that's why I profile super interesting people. And today I get the opportunity to introduce you to my new friend, Scott. Scott, how are you doing today?
Good evening, Michael. Nice to be here.
I'm just so grateful to you, Scott, for taking time to spend it with us. We're going to broadcast this episode into prisons and jails across America. More than 100,000 people in jail and prison already have access to the Prison Professors program, and you're going to help us as kind of a prison professor. But let's start by just letting us know, where are you right now and what time is it?
I'm in Delray Beach, Florida, and it is 9:43 p.m. in the evening.
And you're still working, and I'm just so grateful to you for spending time with us. I'm in California at 6:43 in the evening here, and I reached out to him, but he's such a busy guy. This was the only time I could get him on the video, so we do it whenever we have to. Scott, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your business and what kind of business you're in?
Okay. I am known as a market maker. A market maker is the wholesale side of the over-the-counter stock market. The over-the-counter stock market is generally a penny stock or a pink sheet stock that trades less than $5. And I am competing with other market makers to create a stable and inside market. So when investors want to sell their equity or stock positions in a company, we are there to facilitate those trades.
So I know that that's really complicated to a lot of people in my audience. And that's why I asked them to participate, because if somebody can learn more about how Wall Street works, how investors value companies, that individual can use that in a number of ways. One way, maybe they want to start a landscaping company or something like that. Just understanding how markets move might help you make better decisions in building your business. And this is something you can study anywhere. I studied in prison. I want you to study in prison. But instead of just watching CNBC or reading the newspaper, today you get an opportunity to listen and learn from somebody who does this for a living. So Scott, I really want to thank you for doing this with us. What does a typical day look like for you as a market maker, which I guess we could describe as a professional trader of stocks and financial instruments, correct?
Yes.
So what does your typical day look like?
I'm generally up 4:30 in the morning, going over news and research for the upcoming day. I'm generally going through the latest headlines. I am going through the most active and popular stocks from the previous day. And then I'm going through the social media to see what is trending out there, so I have a full grasp of what is going on.
So we've got a lot to take in from what Scott just told us. I mean, he starts his day at 4:30 in the morning. If you want to become successful in life, this is what I would have learned. He is a man who's achieved a really high level of success, and you'll hear about it as we get through this interview. But if you want to achieve that level, you've got to be willing to work really hard. And that means getting up early. So if you're sitting in jail or a prison right now, that's a skill set that you could start developing. Who forces you to get up that early in the morning, Scott?
Nobody. It's whatever I can do to give myself the best edge for that coming day, to put the odds in my favor. If you can just outwork the competition just a little bit, it puts you in a better position to succeed.
And so if you're in jail or prison, you can start developing this skill of just discipline, figuring out I've got to get up early, because if I get early and if I outwork my competition, I'm going to create more opportunities. And we're going to hear about some of the opportunities that opened for Scott because he organically, internally embraced these disciplines. Some people complain that they have to get up early. It's just part of life, just like brushing your teeth. Isn't that right, Scott?
Absolutely.
And he does it every day and stays up until late at night when he hears what I'm trying to do. So that's why I'm just so grateful to you. Now, when you say that you're trying to understand the market, what are the different tools that you are using to guide your decisions? Or do you tell us how you map out your day?
I'm coming downstairs. I'm getting on the computer, and I'm just going through initially the list of stocks that I have an interest in, and then again I'm going through. I have what is a stock scanner. So I'm refreshing through the previous day's stocks, because those stocks might give me an indication of what's going to be trending or popular today. You always want to go on to, let's say, a CNBC or some kind of news service to find out what the general overall emotional feel is for the market. From there, you want to expand and you want to start looking at all the news headlines that are out there, examining the news, because that will give you an indication of what stocks are going to be the most active stocks on the day. And then from there, you're just narrowing down and you're looking at what type of volume is out there, what type of interest is peaking, and that will give you the indication of where the money is going to flow. The most important part of this whole thing is finding out where the money's flowing, where the volume is flowing, and that will give you the stocks to be able to trade to make the most money in.
So it sounds like the more a person invests in reading, in understanding, developing critical thinking skills, hey, this is what's happening. I've got to understand market psychology. I got to get a feel for what are people talking about. And all of that helps me make better decisions. At least that's what I would have been my takeaway just from listening to what Scott had to say.
It's all about putting the edge in your favor. Excellent. Whatever you can do to put the edge in your favor, to put the odds in your favor, to increase your likelihood of entering the right trade at the right time, that's what your goal is.
So Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and where you grew up? Because I want to help people in jail and prison. A lot of those people didn't grow up with a lot of role models and a lot of advice. They may not even know what a market maker what is a market maker. And so just learning about an occupation is helpful to them. I think it's also helpful to them to say, well, how did you start? I may not have had your background, but I may be able to learn from it, because we always say it's never too early and never too late to start preparing for success. So let us get there kind of by learning your story. Where did you grow up?
I was born in New Jersey, in Englewood Cliffs, which happens to be probably 10, 15 minutes away from the George Washington Bridge. So I was just right over the bridge from New York City. I grew up in a very affluent neighborhood. I was very privileged. I was lucky enough to have parents who would and were willing to do anything to put me in the best position.
And so that means that you went to really good schools and had good mentors around you, but did that absolve you of having to apply yourself? Did you apply yourself to prove worthy of all those privileges?
I had to apply myself mainly because I had a learning disability growing up. I was suffered from dyslexia. Things didn't come to me as easy as everyone else. Learning how to read was a pretty difficult time for me. And I had to have someone who helped me work through those problems. But schooling, wasn't necessarily the most funnest thing for me. But, like everybody, you have to go through it and you do it and you learn from it.
So while you were struggling through school, were there any subjects that you gravitated to? I'm asking if math became an important subject for you because you ended up building a career in finance and understanding how prices move and stocks move. Were there subjects that you found to be helpful, and did you give more attention to those?
Well, yes. Math was one of the things that took naturally to me. My father, when I was growing up, he actually taught me how to read by reading the sports page. Instantly, my father taught me about reading the betting lines, and so the numbers on the betting line, understanding that I knew I had a natural attraction to math and the numbers itself. So the math was mainly something that was my strong point in lower education.
When you were growing up, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do after you finished your academic journey?
No, I can honestly say I had no clue. I had no direction. I was guided in my life because I was big in sports, and sports helped me keep me focused and motivated. And that gave me the path to follow.
So what kind of sports did you play, and how long were organized sports a part of your life?
The sport that I excelled in was football, and that guided me into getting into college. Without football, I wouldn't have gotten into college, and that was pretty much what my main focus was on, probably through middle school, high school, and into the early years of my college career.
So what did you play in football?
I was an offensive lineman. I started out as being a offensive tackle, and then I moved down when I got into college to play center because of my height. I was restricted. I was only 6 feet tall. They want somebody who's a little bit bigger, and with a center, you don't have to be as tall as an offensive tackle, and you don't have to have as long arms. So that's where I gravitated towards, and I was able to use my knowledge and my love for football, because I did so much research and love for it that I understood so much more about it, and that's why center, because center is the heartbeat of the offensive line.
And not only that, but I would imagine that you, besides researching, you had to have a really good work ethic to be disciplined and apply yourself and demonstrate you're a part of the team. And all of those are skills and attributes that we can carry over to other areas of our life. Did you graduate from college?
I did not graduate from college. I spent 2.5 years at the University of Central Florida. When my football career came to an end, I moved back home, where I did a couple of years of community college. And then an opportunity opened, and I was able to open that door.
Well, what kind of work were you doing at that time? Did you work through college, or did you?
Yeah, actually, I was a salesman. Wasn't a great salesman, but I was doing good enough to get me through my 19, 20, 21 years old of age.
And you still at that time didn't have clear direction on what you wanted to do for the long game in your career?
No, I actually had no clue. I really thought I was just going to go into sales until the right door opened for me.
And so that door opened for you. Tell us a little bit about what that door was. How old were you, and how did that opportunity fall into your lap?
I was given an opportunity by a close family friend after my father passed away in 1999. He gave me an opportunity. He saw that I was savvy, that I was, had a work ethic from my collegiate football days. And he saw that I was, for lack of a better word, a go-getter. He knew I had a sales background. He knew I knew how to take no for an answer. He knew I could deal with rejection and get back on that horse and keep going.
And what was the business that he was in that he invited you to participate in?
He owned a market making firm, and he opened up that door for me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have gotten that invitation.
Is that the same firm you're working for now?
No, I moved on from that firm. He's since sold off his business. He's passed away, but he sold off his business in 2004, 2005, and I've moved on to a couple firms since then.
Do you know how he got into the space of owning his own market making firm?
He was lucky enough that his father owned the firm, and he was given that opportunity, and he went on to have a 50 to 60-year career in the business.
And so I imagine he became successful on a monumental level, that guy.
He was very successful in what he did. He was an excellent trader, and he was a hell of a guy.
So the cool thing about that, if I'm sitting in jail or prison and I don't grow up in a really affluent neighborhood and I don't have these role models around me that are opening opportunities to fall in my lap, I'm still learning something. While I'm in jail or prison, I'm saying, well, I may not come from that background, but if I really differentiate myself, if I apply the same lessons that I just heard from Scott, meaning I'm going to develop a really good work ethic, even when he was in football, he made a decision to really research what he loved and try to be the best in the world or the best that he could possibly be. If his coach said move to center from guard or tackle, he was willing to do it. It's a team player. These are skills that we can develop, and we should develop them knowing that the more we invest in ourselves, the more other people are going to be willing to invest in us. And it may not be as a market maker or the owner of a market maker firm, but it could be the owner of a construction company. If you read the books that I wrote, you'll see that's how I got involved in real estate. Somebody saw I was a hard worker. They were willing to extend me capital. I got into business while I was still in the halfway house, and you can do it too. Let's learn a little bit more about Wall Street and about what Scott learned coming in. So when you went to start your career there, you said that you'd been in sales, but you didn't say that you'd worked on Wall Street at all. What knowledge of that industry did you have when you started?
Zero. I didn't know what a bid was. I didn't know what an offer was. I didn't even know what a stock was.
And so tell us a little bit about what your role was or what duties you had to take on at that firm for you to become more knowledgeable and learn about it. What did you do?
Well, when I first came in there, I fetched coffee. I handed, I was a runner. I went to.
What's a runner? What is a runner? I know what fetching coffee is, but I don't know what a runner is.
Just someone who would, when a trader told me to go get something, I ran and I did it.
So help us understand what the office looks like. How big is it? How big is the office to run from one end to the other, and how many people are there?
Oh, well, the gentleman I work for, he actually had a New York office near Wall Street, and he had a Florida office. The Florida office was generally smaller, which is where I worked out of. I would say it was a half a floor, and the New York office was probably a half a football field.
Oh, okay. So New York office is a huge place, but you worked in Florida. Is that right?
Correct.
So you worked in Florida, and that's about the half of the floor of a mid-size office of a skyscraper.
Yes.
And how many people are in that building, in that office?
15 to 20.
Okay, so not a lot of people. So when you say you're a runner, what are you doing? Running from where to where?
You essentially whatever that is that they need you to do.
Does that mean like run to the post office or run to the coffee shop or anything they ask?
Anything they ask.
See, that's an important takeaway there for these guys, because a lot of guys in prison will think some tasks are going to be beneath them. But if you want to distinguish yourself and create opportunities, you got to be willing to do anything because it's your foot in the door. And that's kind of what I'm trying to convey. Tell me a little bit about how that worked for you.
I picked up plenty of dry cleaning when I first started out of the business.
Okay. And how long did it take before you started to learn the real mechanics of how the business operates?
It was over a year, probably closer to at least 2 years before I fully understood what I was doing and was able to handle and trade a stock.
Okay, so didn't you have to do some things before you could handle and trade a stock? Like you said, you didn't have a college degree. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you have to get any types of credentials to take that job?
Yes, I end up having to get licensed, all the basic license, Series 755, Series 63, and eventually my principal's license, which is a Series 24, but that was down the road.
So how do you study to get those licenses? What do you have to do? What is the process to get a license?
Taking your Series 7 and getting your Series 7 license is equivalent, from what I understand, to getting your bar license to be an attorney. The information is so overwhelming. That's why most people do not pass the first time you take it. But it's just reading the material over and over and over again and having a firm knowledge of the general topics that you're going to be going over, whether it's equities, whether it's bonds, whether it's options.
And so you just threw out two different terms there: equities, stocks, and bonds. And these are terms that are used in business every day. Could you tell us, are stocks and equities, are those the same thing?
Yes.
And what is the difference between a stock and a bond?
All right. Well, a stock is where a company sells a portion of their company to the general public, an investor. That investor now owns a very small piece or a substantial piece of that company, and they have ownership in it. So if the stock goes up, they generally make money, and if the stock goes down, they will lose money. But that is, again, how each name trades and how each stock is different.
And a bond is debt.
It's debt. It's a corporation or the government selling debt to the public and paying an interest on that debt.
So it's important to understand, for me, if I'm in prison and thinking, well, I'd like to learn more about stocks, equity in a company, or bond, which is I've lent money to the company or to an entity, and that company has an obligation to pay me back. But if I own a piece of stock, which, a cup, just something, right? What's it worth? It's only worth what the next guy's willing to pay for it.
That's correct.
And so the bond is worth the debt because you've lent the money, but the stock is worth what the next person's willing to pay for it. And if we can remember that, that's kind of an easy way that I learned about stocks and bonds and how that could apply to me. But I would encourage you, if you're sitting in jail or prison and the finance sector interests you, do be like Scott and invest in yourself. Figure out what do you have to do, because the rewards of understanding this industry can be magnificent. And I'm talking with a guy who understands a little bit of that magnificence. And Scott, since I'm trying to really teach and inspire people in this industry, give us a little, if you could, and if you'd be willing to, how did your compensation change? When you started, did you have any idea of what you would be earning in this space?
When I started, I was making $18,000 a year.
Okay.
And I was grateful to be making that. It was a pay cut for me, but I knew there was an opportunity there. I knew I had seen the money that could be made in this industry, so it was okay to take that small salary because of the upside potential.
So you said it took you about 2 years to learn the industry. And we know you just said you started at $18,000 a year, which is the equivalent today of about minimum wage, I guess. It's effectively an internship. You're training and learning. But after 2 years, now you know something about it. You have your licenses. You've done a few things in your belt. What does the earning trajectory look like at 2 years when you're in it? What would you have said? Do you remember?
Yeah, I believe I was making approximately $50,000.
So 2 years later, you've effectively doubled your industry. And how long have you been in it? How long have you been? Actually, 18. I'm not doing very good math here, so it's quite a bit more than doubling. It's almost tripling your money, which is great. But now now you're a seasoned professional. What was it like 5 years into the industry?
5 years into the industry, I started making more exponentially more money. I would say at that point, my worst year, I was making over 100,000 at that point. Pretty
So
steadily.
making north of 100 grand a year. And how about, and this is getting interesting to people. This is a reason why somebody might want to say, wow, if I could pursue that pathway, maybe this is something I should learn about. I think that was a quote that you spoke with me when I first reached out and asked you, why did you get into this? And you got some wisdom from your friend who asked you a question about it. What did he tell you again?
My buddy, he said to me, Scott, does the guy who's offering you a job, does he make more money than you? I said, yes, he makes a lot more money than you, than me. And he said, well, maybe you should listen to what this guy has to say then.
And that's the exact advice I'd like you to be thinking about. So as you became more confident, a real professional, you're 10, 15 years into the career, what does that earning look like annual? Like what would have been, how long have you been in the business now? How many years?
21 years.
21 years. And what would have been after 10 years into the business, what does a typical year look like in earnings?
There's certainly volatility in this business. It fluctuates. My highest year that I made was a touch under 900,000. My lowest year, again, like I was saying, was after I would say my fifth year, I didn't make less than 100,000. On average, I was making 400,000, $300,000 to $400,000, maybe a little bit more a year.
And so I'm going to paraphrase his friend and say, if you're listening to somebody that excites you and he's making more money than you, you better pay attention and listen. But it's not so easy to get into that space of being a market maker. That's because true. I understand you're just telling me that you've got to have a series license. You've got to have the relationships to get in the door. And of course you have to perform. But is there a way to take that knowledge, and we've spoken about it, so I know there is, and apply that to, say, creating my own income stream? And if so, could you help us understand what that process is?
Yeah, a lot of the same and similar traits that I use day in and day out, market makers use as well. Day traders use as well. That would be the best way for Joe Public to be able to have access to the market and essentially do what I do on a more simplistic terms.
So if somebody spent all of his or her time in prison, and they can watch CNBC, they can order a newspaper, they can read and study. I know that I did, and I never asked anybody to do anything that I didn't do. It was always studying. It was always developing communication skills, developing business skills, developing critical thinking skills. If you do that for many, many years, you may be able to start your journey as a day trader. Now, yes. A day trader, what would be the first thing they would have to do? Well, first of all, how much capital would it take if somebody felt confident in what they were doing and they wanted to move into this space? Would they need a license to do this?
No, you don't need a license to do it. You can do it with as little as $500 or $1,000, but if you want to truly take advantage, I would say you need more than $35,000 in one account, so you don't have the day trading pattern rule, which limits you to
day trading. What kind of rule?
Day trading pattern rule.
Okay. Day trading pattern rule. Okay.
Yeah, that limits you to only doing 3 trades per day. And if you were to try and sell one of those positions within that day, you would put your account into restriction. So it makes it worth your while to have an account with more than $35,000.
So if you have more than $35,000, that day trading pattern rule doesn't apply to you?
It does not apply to you. You can still trade. It hampers you and limits you in your full access to the market.
Right, but those limitations and hampers disappear when I get north of $35,000 in my account.
That's correct.
So $35,000 is a great start, but if of course the market plunges, it would seem that the guy's got to have a little bit of cushion. So, like, is there a safer place that if I want to start earning a living a day trade, I want to be able to take money out every month and pay my rent and pay my insurance and live my life and, eat a bowl of pasta once in a while? What is that? What should I have as a starting capital base, really?
In an ideal world, $50,000.
So 50K, you think I could earn a living
Yes.
if I'm good, okay? But
Yes.
if I have 200,000 or 150,000, then just things get easier. Is that right?
It does make it easier. It doesn't guarantee you making money, but it certainly makes it easier for you.
So in this business, I am not, if I want to pursue a career as a day trader and I want to prepare for that market, what are the best things that I could be studying if I'm in jail or a prison? I can't access the market. I can't read. What would you recommend the best basic skills that I should develop?
Well, the first thing I would say is get educated. If there's any type of education, books, knowledge to just get simple education about what the stock market is and knowing the ins and outs and the ropes, it's a must. It's a must before you can actually enter and do your first trade. You want to do some research about fundamental and technical analysis. I am a technical analysis type guy. It stuck more to me. But you want to get educated about charting and just the general makeup and trading of books. Also, psychology and emotion play such a big part in trading. The more knowledge and education you get in those topics, the better off you're going to be.
So there's a lot of wisdom in what we just heard from Scott, as there always is. When we listen to successful people and we hear what they're doing, there's a couple of ways that we can look at and listen to him. We could say, oh, he's lucky. He came from a very affluent family, he said. He had somebody who gave him a break. But I heard something else. I also heard that when he loved something, he really applied himself. He studied football, he said. He had a good work ethic. If his coach told him to do something, he didn't hesitate. He did what was for the good of the team, and then he tried to be the best that he could possibly be on the team. Even though he wasn't a good student, he pursued higher education in college. Even though he was going to start off running for dry cleaning and doing entry-level work and getting coffee, he didn't think that was beneath him. He said, it's worth it. I can postpone my immediate gratification so I can have a better opportunity later. And then he's gone on to make as much as nearly $1 million in a single year. So these are reasons for you to stay focused on school. He just told us to focus on education. Let's do it. I know that that's what I did. And then he gave us a number of more professional terms, fundamental analysis. I know when I was in prison what it meant, fundamental analysis. Do you? If you don't know, learn. Technical analysis. I know we're going to have a little bit deeper dive in technical analysis, Scott, in the next phase of this lesson, because you were generous enough to say you'd spend more time with me and I could show you, we'll tell you what we did. But where would somebody go if somebody said, okay, I have invested all of my time, all of my energy, I want to get started. Where do they go to get started to open an account and to become a day trader?
Well, you generally go to one of the bigger brokerage houses, Interactive Brokers, TD Ameritrade. They have the platforms. They're the easiest access, probably most user-friendly as well.
And what types of stocks are available to trade on those types of brokerage houses?
You can trade mostly anything from a large cap to a small cap stock to an OTC or penny stock, which is what I specialize in my whole career.
So give us a difference of what those different categories mean. What is a large cap?
A large cap stock is generally a stock that has a market cap value of probably 10 billion or more. You're looking at a Tesla, an Apple, a major company has major shareholders that trades at a major price and has a lot of liquidity to it.
And when you use the term market cap, just for the people in our audience, I used to really enjoy learning that when I was in prison. A market cap is shorthand for market capitalization, which means it's the total value of the company. So we want to learn to become fluent, like Scott is fluent in this financial language, if we want to build a career in business. We want to know what is the whole company worth. And he just gave us an example in a large cap company of the biggest companies in the world. What about a small cap company? What's that?
A small cap stock, I generally would say, is a billion, has a market cap of about $1 billion. It trades probably under $10, $20. But I would not call it a pink sheet or a penny stock. It trades probably, there are some that trade below $5, but for the most part, $5 or higher.
So they're not quite as stable and well capitalized as a large cap, but they're not quite as volatile as a pink sheet stock. Is that right?
Absolutely. That is correct.
And the pink sheet stocks, the over-the-counter stocks, what does that industry look like? What does the typical equity look like there?
Well, the nickname for it is the Wild Wild West. There's a lot of volatility and a lot of liquidity there. If you pick the right stocks, sometimes there's very little liquidity in some of these stocks, but it's generally a market cap that's under $1 billion, under $5 in trading.
Meaning the individual stock itself is under $5.
For the most part, the majority, yes.
And that's the high end then, as $5. What is the low end of entry of picking up a piece of stock?
There's plenty of stocks that trade at spot 0001, 0001. For most part, it's under $1.
So 0.0001, that basically means, is that 1,000th of 1 penny?
That is correct.
So that means if I bought 100 shares or $100 in that equity, I might have thousands of shares of that stock effectively.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's interesting. And so what we've done is since I wanted to learn more and provide a background, I went before in anticipation of this interview, I opened an account at a brokerage firm just so I could kind of show people what does it look like and walk through it with Scott, because anybody that has years where he makes $1 million a year, like his friend told him, I want to learn from that guy. And I got to think you want to learn from that guy as well. So I opened an account and I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and hope our technology will allow us to share the screen. So there we have it. Now, are you able to see my screen, Scott?
Yep, there it goes. Came up right now.
Okay. So this is the TD Ameritrade account. That's the homepage right there. And I just opened the account. I tried to fund it so that we could do something, but we're after hours anyway, so we wouldn't have been able to do anything. But that doesn't stop us from being able to learn something. And so if I want to learn something, the place I want to go, or you see these tabs here, this is the cool thing about being in society and not being in prison, is you get to access this thing called the internet. When I was locked up, Scott, the internet didn't exist when I started. And so when I was in prison, I used to dream about the internet and say, well, what is it? Well, my friends, this is the internet if you've been in prison for a long time. And so I can just click on here, go to stocks, click on trade and go to stocks. And there we have it. I got to log in again. Okay, there we are. And I can go to trade. I can go to stocks and ETFs, which is what we're talking about. Now, it said stocks and ETFs. What is an ETF, Scott? Electronically traded fund, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're packaging multiple stocks into one to give the stock shareholders more value, or
maybe take off some of the risk. So I might not know what I know that biotechnology is an important sector in the marketplace, but I don't know which biotechnology company to buy. So I could buy an ETF that specializes in biotechnology, and there might be a basket of the best biotechnology stocks. So I don't have to do as much research. I just trust them. But there's probably some pluses and minuses to buying that. Isn't that right, Scott?
Absolutely.
So if
pluses is there's a lot more safety in it. You're not just being affected if one stock goes down. You have the others to hold up your value in your equity. Some of these ETFs though charge massive fees. So
Yeah.
so you have a declining asset, an asset that's writing off money every month. So you have to be careful in your long-term holding period of that stock.
Right.
Equity. Yeah.
And so once I hit that screen, though, I can come to this screen and you'll notice that I've got these different options here of what I can do. Do I want to buy? I click this arrow, I can sell. I can choose what I want to do. I can choose what kind of order it makes. And Scott, why don't you tell us what these different orders mean?
For a new trader, I would always tell you to do a limit order. A limit order is where you're putting in the highest price you're willing to buy or the lowest price that you're willing to sell. The next option is a market order. A market order gives you the ability to pay to get a fill to buy your stock or to sell your stock at any price, as high as it takes or as low as it takes to get your order complete.
Go ahead.
It's volatile, and for a new trader, I would not recommend it.
Stop market.
A stop market is you put a stop limit on your order where you want to be stopped out, and once it goes below or above, depending on whether you're long or short, it turns into a market order.
And the stop limit.
A stop limit is essentially the same thing. It's basically you're protecting your account, and if it goes below or above, you have set in a precursor that you don't want to pay as high as or sell as low as whatever the limit is that you put in.
So let's take a look at a typical stock. I've opened a chart here for one of these companies, and maybe you could kind of help us understand what are these. Well, let's just open one. Why don't you give us the name of one that you would like us to take a look at, or the symbol rather.
The stock that I like to show you first that I trade, because I trade mostly on the OTC, is GGII.
Okay. And this is the stock right here. So when we buy a stock, we use a symbol, GGII. That's the symbol, and that stands for Green Globe International Common Stock. And could you tell us how much time do you spend in getting to know the company itself when you're making a trade?
I spend very minimal amount of time researching what the company does per se. I will look into the volume and the liquidity of a stock, and I will try and figure out what is the catalyst, what is the reason why that stock is trading so actively.
So before we start getting into looking at an actual chart and what it looks like, I notice on the summary page, we've got some information. Does this information play an interest to you in your initial assessment of whether to participate in the stock?
It's a great benefit, and everybody should look at it. But for me per se, it holds a value in the fact that I can learn how many shares are outstanding. So that gives me some basic due diligence and knowledge of the company that I'm trading. But I look to see how the stock is trading itself and the volume. Volume is always the leading indicator for me in trading a stock.
So earlier we heard Scott talk about technical analysis and fundamental analysis. This is all an example of some basic, actually this is probably a combination, because we're learning a little bit about how many shares are out, how many shares it trades on an average volume in a 10-day cycle. We get some range here. We also get some fundamental analysis, which is how much is the total company worth? This company's worth up roughly $170 million. We can see how many shares outstanding it has, but we could also go here to the fundamentals tab and learn a lot more. This is an area where we'd be learning about the company itself. We'd learn about some really profit and loss type information of its and ratios. How much is the price to sales? And you said that this is really not very important to you as a technical analyst. Is that right?
Correct. For the fundamental side, it'll tell you how much the company is making, what their burn rate is, about the CEOs, or maybe the contracts that they have in place. It'll give you the balance sheet of the company. It will tell you about the management of the company.
And you can kind of see how it's done over time. I mean, this gives us a pretty simple analysis here that in 2007, this company had more than $5 million in cash, but by 2010, it had less than 3. So that's an interesting tell. You've also got some interest on its income statement here, that it's gone from $50 million in revenues down to about nothing in 2007. But since then, it's really picked up. So this is interesting to somebody who's a fundamental analyst. But if I'm a technical analyst, I'm going to look over here. Isn't that right, on the charts page?
Yes.
And this is where we're going to see what's going on here. And I can even go to that section there where we can look at the volume, because right now we don't see the volume. We see I do have the volume open as well. So why don't we take a look at this? What does these mean up here, Scott?
What you have there is you have a way to break down your chart into whatever time frame you want to look at a chart. And the way I generally start is I will start from the longest period out to give me the longest time frame of that company to show me the whole trading history of it. Now this is no good, but I would go down to 10 years, and then from 10 years I would break down to 5 years. And then I'd probably go down to a year, just so I get a feel. And you're trying to learn as much as you can about the way the stock trades and the way the stock reacts. Again, the stock is an equity, or a stock is very emotional. So you need to see how the investing public is reacting to the trades that are going on the tape. So you can go out and you can use the expanded charts and break it all the way down to as little as the daily chart, to give you an indication of the trend that a stock has had throughout its history.
And we can also use different tools here, such as you showed me this tool a little bit earlier, where it allows us to use these lines so that we can really get a feel of what you described for me earlier as a technical analyst as support and resistance. What are we seeing here with regard to support and resistance on, say, a 10-day chart? Let's go to a 10-day chart, or would you rather go on a 3-month chart? What's a good one for you to look at?
Either one is perfect. 3 months, the further out, I guess, is giving us a better example of what we're looking at here. And what you can see is a stock that has really moved higher in the last 2-3 months or so. You can see right around April 22nd or so, the true increase in volume. And again, remember I said volume is always the leading indicator for me. So you can see that a whole bunch of people found a reason, whether it was news-based or whether it was something else, to go in and buy this stock. And you can see the emotion and the momentum that was followed through in the previous days.
And what Scott's showing us here is this vertical bar. I hope you can see my cursor going up and down right here on this area right here. And if you look at the size of that, that means 1.25 billion shares are trading there, versus if you go back before you spoke about that breakout, it was fewer than 100 million shares. So 15 times as many shares, and it's going higher. So that's an indicator that tells you what, Scott?
Volume is an indicator. If there's volume and you can see a trend going on with the stock, you can use that to your advantage. In this case, there was so much volume and the price was reacting as such that it was a good indication of a purchase.
And you can see how quickly this is rising. At this stage here, if we go back to early March, early April, we say that this stock is opening at 0.0001. That's what he's talking about, 1/100th of a penny, right? And by the end of April, it's trading at, well, a lot higher. Okay. But it hasn't broken out until we get over here. And now you can see where it's trading in these numbers up here. Look at how it's trading. And this is just in a few days. So in a few days, it's going more than 10 times your money.
Yeah.
Going from 0.003 to, well, now it's a penny. So that's actually almost probably 50 times your money, and then before you know it, it's at 2 cents and then 3 cents. And this is all in a matter of less than a week and a half. It's gone. I mean, that's really almost more than 100x your money. Isn't that right, Scott?
That's why I love the OTCs, the volatility and the liquidity.
And so you have this opportunity to learn a great deal about different markets, and you can contrast that wherein, I can look at a calculator and say, well, if you stepped into the space at this level with as little as $5,000 right here, you're starting to see the trends moving around. But how often do you see something like this, Scott? Is this a typical OTC issue?
It's very common. I won't say every stock trades like this, but we will have a dozen stocks per day that trades similar to this.
And the key is going to be the guy who gets up early in the morning enough to find which one is it.
You want to put yourself in the best position. So it's all about doing the research and spending the time. And if you do that, it's half the battle. It's putting you in, you're setting yourself up to know and to eliminate all the question marks when the stock market does open. You're putting yourself in the best position to make those decisions.
And let's just put that into perspective for those who don't have a handy calculator with them. If you start with something as little as $5,000 and you were able to spot this trend, you got up early in the morning and you saw that you could buy it here for 0.001 equals, you'd have 5 million shares of the stock at this on April the 13th.
Yeah. Okay.
And on May, just say you decided to get out around here, you had enough fun here, and you got out at 0.0025. Is that the price right there?
0235, 023.
0235 equals, well, your $5,000 investment would be worth $117,000. Now, I don't know if you could live off of a $115,000 gain in 2 weeks, but that's what happens if you work like Scott and you learn about these markets. And that's the reason I think that you want to do what you can to learn about new careers and new professions. And Scott, I'm just so grateful to you for taking the time after getting up at 4:30 in the morning on a Friday, as you do every day. But golly, what time is it now in Florida?
10:48.
10:48. That's what it means to be investing in yourself. You got to want to work as hard as you possibly can to build a successful career. And if you're sitting in a jail or a prison right now, it's my hope that you will take these lessons and figure out how can you use it in your life. Scott, I'm going to leave the last word with you. Do you have any advice? I know you don't work with a lot of people who are formerly incarcerated, but you got an opportunity to inspire them right now. Is there any final words of wisdom you might suggest for them as they contemplate how they're going to crack the code into building a successful life upon release?
If you have an interest in trading, take the time, do the research, get educated, start out slow, start out with small amounts of quantity on size, and build up your confidence. Find the sector that best fits you, whether it's a small cap or whether it's trading Apple or whether it's trading a GGII on the over the counter. Find the sector that best fits you and you feel the most comfortable in, and then take it slow and build your confidence.
And that's what we have to do. If you've been going through this course, I like to recap every one of these lessons by just sharing what I would have learned if I were in prison and how this applies to you wherever you are. Step one, you've really got to define success in your life. You got to figure out what it is that you want. Once Scott figured out what he wanted to do and he went all in, there was no stopping what he would do. He would get coffee. He would run out and get clothes for the dry cleaners. He would do anything it took. He'd pass a license. He'd study really hard and he'd make it happen. And so you've got to, first of all, define success in your life, and then you've got to set those clear goals and demonstrate you're going to work toward them. We can do that whether we're in prison. I'm still doing it out here in society, and I hope that you will do it as well. Then, after you've defined success, you've set your goals, you got to have the right attitude. And what did Scott say about having the right attitude? He's been doing this for 21 years, and he still gets up at 4:30 in the morning, and he's up volunteering his time, not only to talk with us for an hour, but also to help us craft out a lesson plan, because he also believes we want to help solve the greatest social injustice of our time. 4, he says, you've got to have an aspiration. We heard Scott's aspiration. He saw somebody who was far more successful than him, and he aspired to get there. So he was willing to take a pay cut to work for $18,000 a year, believing he could do better. 5, you got to take action. You can't talk about wanting to be successful. If you want something in your life, you got to sow the seeds and go get it. We heard Scott doing that from the time he was a child until who he is today. And there's been a big payoff. But 6, you got to hold yourself accountable. Every day, Scott either lives or dies by the decisions that he makes. So he's got to be disciplined, and he's got to know, where do I get in? Where do I get out? He's looking at charts. He's studying trends. He's trying to get an edge on the market. So he's holding himself accountable to do that. And that leads right into the 7th module of our course. You got to keep your eyes open. You got to have your head in the game, be aware of what's going on. If you work really hard, the market's going to become aware of you. And he told us how a guy gave him a shot. Well, he gave him a shot, but Scott had to continue working to earn that shot. Number 8, you got to be authentic. You could see how easily Scott spoke about his business because he knows it just as well as he knows the back of his hand. That's what you've got to do if you want to be the best in the world at anything. 9, you got to celebrate every achievement, no matter how small. Keep working, keep growing, knowing that I might be working for $18,000 or minimum wage today, but I'm going to get better, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to be the best in the world at what I do. And then 10, important as well, make sure that you're showing your gratitude for the blessings that have come your way. And we don't have to talk about that with Scott because he's here talking with us at nearly 11 o'clock at night. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Scott, for being a part of the Prison Professors program. You've done a great service for people, men and women, and even at-risk youth by just giving them an introduction into your world. And I appreciate you for taking the time. You were very gracious in responding to my request, and I want to thank you.
This truly was a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we'll be making sure that Scott's also agreed to work with me in writing an extensive lesson plan on what you could learn from this. And it will be a part of this video series. And we want you to go through it so that you can reach your highest potential as well. We believe in you. We want you to be successful. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. But if you're inside of a jail or a prison, make sure you stick with the Prison Professors program so that you can emerge successfully too. I am Michael Santos, and on behalf of our entire team, we thank you.